This is a continuation of part 1 of the mystery of Mazzaroth. In part 2, we are exploring the 12 designated main nodes of mystery schools and how they can affect us, and we can work with them now. But first, we need to understand them as a whole. Now, if you haven't watched part 1, I really suggest you watch that first before you see this video, because you need to understand what Mazzaroth and Mazaloth are all about. So let us begin. From my 1997 Thothic translations and article, the 12 main fonts within the planetary experience relative to the Mazzaroth, Mazaloth mystery work, starting in Mu or Lemuria. The following list in no way encompasses all the mystery schools of the Mazzaroth. However, these 12 were chosen by the spiritual hierarchy to be those mystery schools which would define in frequency the Mazzarothic path into the Mazaloth or higher worlds within the human experience. Now I pause to say, just to refresh your memory, the Mazzaroth represents the 12 zodiacal signs. It's not the signs themselves, but the frequencies that enter from the higher heavens to be able to orchestrate and to guide those gates or portals into the higher realm of the Mazaloth. So we begin with the first, which is the Hall of the Heaven Houses, circa 500,000 BC. The Melchisedekian Supreme Temple Complex of Mu. From the source, issue 2/385, I am quoting, that's my own periodical, and this is Thothic translation. From Venus, Earth's guardian planet, Venus is a viable world in the higher dimensions, was given a doctrine to establish a means of spiritual receipt in the Supreme Temple. This was an attempt by the Universal Brotherhood, or spiritual hierarchy, to recapture radiance on the planet Earth. The hierarchies of living lights through the guardian Venus sent the emissary Melchisedek to Earth, where, in the Supreme Temple, he established the Order of Melchisedek. Surrounding the Supreme Temple was an outer circle of chambers, the whole composing the Hall of the Heaven Houses, or Zodiac. Each chamber or building was a temple unto itself, expressing the mysteries of one of the 12 zodiacal houses. Within each heaven house was established one oracle priestess and 7 priests. What is being imparted here is that the mystery school temple was given a doctrine, a higher spiritual directive and mandate by the high priest Melchisedek, an emissary of the higher worlds of spiritual intelligence. The very design of this temple was such that there was a specific chamber allotted to each of the 12 signs of the zodiac, arranged in a circular pattern on the outer perimeter of the temple complex. The dynamic of the Mazzaroth could then be worked with and anchored through the very geometry of the temple itself, greatly facilitating the subtler levels of spiritual sentient work being done. Within each of the chambers, or temples, there was one priestess oracle and 7 priests assigned to work with that particular throne or facet of the Mazzaroth. The exact reason for this numeric arrangement, 1 oracle and 7 priests, has not yet been revealed to me at this time. Well, I'm going to pause and say that from the present, Thoth is stating that the 7 and 1, the 8 octave, is represented here, and with the oracle, the priestess, as the font of that expression through divine feminine, the 7 is sort of an orchestration number. It brings it down into the 7 levels of experiential reality. Okay, I know that's very esoteric and really doesn't mean much of anything unless you went and studied it, but I thought I'd mention it because that is what is come through at this time. To continue. Unfortunately, this temple was eventually taken over by males who wished to assume the power granted by Melchizedek to the female oracles. It was the feminine oracle's natural right to be in the position as a receptor for the energies of the sacred earth. The overthrow of feminine power in this temple was one of the major events in the fall from grace that the planetary consciousness experienced. And I also wish to state that there were male priests that did not go along with this at all and that were loyal to the whole dedication of the Melchizedekan temples and what they represented. But there were always those, like we have in the current time, male and female, that decided to go against those rules because they wished more power to themselves. And it doesn't mention this here, but there were some females, not the priestesses, the 12 priestesses of the Mazzaroth, but there were other females involved in that overthrow in Mu. Hand of Melchizedek, circa 30,000 BC. This mystery school was part of the Melchizedekian temple in Atlantis. A lesser version of the Lemurian or Mu order of Melchizedek flourished in this mystery school for a long period of time until it too succumbed to a patriarchal takeover of the feminine seats of oracle spiritual power. This mystery school was named after a very powerful symbol, an open hand with an eye or emerald, and the emerald was considered the stone of Melchizedek or Utal, which was the ancient name for him, in the center of the palm. This symbol was a light form that served to activate spiritual consciousness within an individual whom had been given it by the hierarchy. Melchizedek would place this symbol into the auric field of his initiates as an aid to them and as a spiritual sign of their service to the One. It is important to note that the remaining priestesses and loyal priests of the hand of Melchizedek, or Uta, were welcomed upon the Atlantean Isle of Ruta, now ascended, where they became the Grail queens and kings, which is a metaphorical term Thoth applies to them, and through migration would become the Mazur. Eye of Heru, or Horus, circa 25,000 BC. A mystery school in the Temple of Senna complex at the foot of Mount Sinai. From the source, issue 488, this is my publication of the past. In the age of Horus, when Heru, or Horus, the Great, was among the Egyptian people, a new temple was built for his lineage at the foot of Mount Sinai, the Mount of Moses. This holy structure was the Temple of Senna, where the altars of Senna had been cut into the stone at the mountain's base in a time long before the Osiris period. While certain buildings of the Holy Order encircled the temple, no city was built around it, as had been done with the Osiris temple. The reasoning for not building a city around the Temple of Senna involved the sensitivity of the regions of Mount Sinai in that age and the inability of the average Egyptian to cope with the intense energies that were being manifest at this summit and down into the valley floor and into the Temple of Senna. Of course, we're seeing what would be considered by archaeologists outrageous dating, 25,000 BC. However, if we look at some of the ancient structures that are being unearthed now in Turkey that have been carbon dated that long ago, it puts a new perspective on all of this. To continue. Again, we have reference to the buildings which encircle the temple, which were also structures dedicated to the 12 thrones of the Mazzaroth, as in the hall of the heaven houses. School of the 12 Paths, circa 9000 BC. A mystery school in the Atlantean Hebridean temple complex of Ogmore on the Isle of Lewis off the coast of Scotland. Thoth speaks on the Hebridean temples. Certain groups of Atlanteans, many with the Hyperborean bloodlines, migrated to the British Isles during a series of lesser cataclysms, which led to the final large deluge, which heralded the final demise of the Atlantean civilization. After this major deluge, there was a temple grid established upon the Scottish Hebridean Isles, whose coastal outline in some areas looked much different than today. In that age, these isles seem relatively new, despite the fact that their actual geology is some of the oldest on the Earth, due to the fact that land masses were experiencing sudden upheavals. These upheavals could easily cause islands to sink and rise in the blink of an eye. The British Isles at that time were known by the Atlanteans as Alba On, the bridging place. Their climate and topography were much like northern Atlantis, and with the temple systems that were already in place, the isles provided an inviting haven for the temple craft after the Great Deluge. The ordinary folk of Atlantis and other lands affected by the deluge largely considered Alba On a place to be avoided. This was due to the fact that they had become very suspicious of the temple craft. Not that surprising, considering the misaligned experimentation conducted during the end days of Atlantis. Many of these people were not able to discern the good from the bad among them. Thus, while still respectful lest they offend the gods, they were nevertheless distrustful and preferred to stay at a distance from the Ithkas, meaning the God-knowing ones. Consequently, Alba On was almost solely populated by the Ithkas for a period of time. These souls served the temples of heaven on earth in some capacity or another. The Hebrides were at that time the primary temple ground, the center place of sacred presence for all the British Isles. The priests and priestesses there were true representatives of the remaining light of the world. This was the light that had been kept comparatively pure during the Atlantean conflicts between the shepherd races, forces of light, and the Nephilim, forces of darkness. However, it was not long before the Dark Order made their shadow known on the Isles as well. Yet they were not allowed upon the Hebrides. Even though they brought their own following with them, the Dark Order had no real authority with the indigenous people in the Isles, and their weaknesses were obvious. Thus they conspired to destroy the Hebridean temple stronghold. There was much intrigue and several failed attempts, but finally they were successful. The temples were greatly damaged. Although the Hebrides would remain a temple complex for a period longer, it was never again to regain its former glory. Many of the sacred keepers who served the temples of Alba On began to move on to other lands once the main site, the Agmur, had been destroyed. This event fractured the energy running through the entire temple matrix of the sacred isles that had been previously installed through high-level spiritual sentient activity. Academy of Thoth, circa 8090 BC. This was Thoth's mystery school at Heliopolis, Egypt. We're speaking here of Thoth Racemus of Afra. It was in Heliopolis that the Solar Legion, a specific gathering of master souls, incarnated in near-immortal human forms and founded their seat of authority. They had incarnated in physical forms to aid the planet and its souls in the midst of a very difficult age, when the great light was rapidly receding from the face of the earth. It was also at this sacred place that Thoth Racemus established his home and academy, and where his library still remains hidden beneath the ground to this day. In later years, the greatest of the Sun Lords, the Master Yeshua, would journey to Heliopolis for his solar initiation. Other master souls, such as Akhenaten, Moses, Pythagoras, and Zarathustra, also made their way into the mystery schools of Heliopolis. The Academy of Thoth was maintained in a lesser form well into the 6th century BC. This was long after Thoth himself transformed his embodiment and took his entire being into the center of the earth. Mystery School of Onas, circa 3555 BC. This school was located near Galilee in Jordan. It was in an area of what is now called Qas, where once the Greco-Roman city of Gadara stood. The records of Thoth reveal that the Mystery School of Onas continued its operations into the 3rd century BC. There are 12 statues of the guardians of Mazzaroth, the androgynous lion human who holds the mystery of the starry way, the Zodiac. These were positioned at specific points in the Mystery School complex of Onas, and each was assigned to a Mazzarothic throne. The Mystery School was designed architecturally such that there were energetic positions created where the statues had to be placed. The points where the statues were positioned received the power of the Mazzaroth descending into the sacred geometry of the Mystery School and its structures. These points, or nodes, in the Mystery School drew upon the Mazzarothic thrones through sacred ritual and the focused intent of the Hierophants. The Sphinx statues positioned on these nodes thus became portals to anchor the higher emanations of the Zodiac to the reality of the Mystery School. The Mystery School of Onas held an envelope within time-space that was subtly removed from the rest of the world. This is not to say that it was physically removed or invisible. Its presence was removed from the lower astral distractions of the world. When one entered the consciousness envelope or makaba of Onas, they would feel a profound shift in their awareness that allowed them to access deeper levels of their spirit self than could be accomplished by them in the outer world. The Sphinx statues were infused with a certain consciousness of protection and restoration. These infusions employed sacred mantras chanted in a particular order, rhythm, and repetition, along with ritual burning of sacred incense and invocation of higher spiritual presence. The consciousness or blessings infused into the statues protected the sacred thresholds of the Mazzaroth within Onas, so that the holy work of the Mazzaroth could proceed without intrusion. There are certain souls who wove the thread of spiritual continuity through the 12 mystery schools of the Mazzaroth. In other words, they incarnated in the experience of all 12. Their purpose in doing this was to establish the thread of continuity needed in the Akasha and the world soul memory for this specific work with the unfolding evolution in the planetary consciousness. At Onas, a grouping of souls was charged with carrying the Lemurian Atlantean knowledge form of this work into the New World presentation. The New World knowledge began with Noah's covenant and the Solar Legion after the flood of 2345 BC and ended with the ministry of Yeshua. The New World knowledge represented the primary phase of spiritual evolution that the planetary consciousness experienced at that time. Chronologically, the Mystery School of Onas was situated between the two lesser world deluges of 5015 BC and 2345 BC, which occurred after the Great Deluge of 9010 BC. However, there was a small remnant of the Mystery School of Onas, which did continue past the time of the latter deluge of 2345 BC. Now, there is something I wish to mention here. These deluge dates, they're going to be confusing because there's another aspect to them, and that is that last date, that's when Noah arrived with his 3 arks of DNA and other things that were brought through the time tsunami of Atlantis. So he didn't take off in that date, but instead the deluge that destroyed Atlantis. If you look at it from a linear aspect, there's that last flood date. However, it was created through a time tsunami. So it is really just an extension of the other two deluges. I would recommend you don't try to think about that too hard, but I just wanted to mention it here. To continue, the period of operation for the mystery school of Onas was a crucial time for preserving the ancient knowledge of the Atlantean epoch. For although Atlantis was swept asunder as a nation in 9010 BC, its colonies and teachings still persisted through the time of the second lesser deluge. With the last deluge of 2345 BC, the descendants of Noah began to populate the earth, bringing with them what could be called the Old Testament knowledge form. The mystery school of Onas, being the last mystery school of the Mazzaroth to be intact after the series of deluges, was the remaining hope to carry the light codes of the last remaining pure vestiges of the Lemurian Atlantean consciousness forward in time. It was successful to some degree in this endeavor. The Raru Mystery School, circa 1685 BC. The meaning of Raru is the undulating serpent. This mystery school was located in Babylon. It is here that Noah's descendants changed the knowledge form being carried forth from Atlantis into the new world knowledge symbolized by the Rainbow Covenant of Noah. The Rainbow Covenant is a term from the records of Thoth. In the Bible, it is represented in the covenant God made with Noah, whereby he would never again destroy the world with water. And to seal this promise, God produced the first rainbow in the sky. The records of Thoth impart a somewhat different version. This covenant was made between the Atlantean Noah and the Solar Legion, a branch of the spiritual hierarchy who oversaw the actions of the Brotherhood of the Sun on earth. Noah was from among the Brotherhood of the Sun. These were souls who carried a strong solar consciousness light patterning born of stellar genetics from the Mazzaroth worlds. Thoth was also one of the Sunborn, as they were called. When the canopy composed of ice particles in the atmosphere broke apart with the Atlantean deluge, individual rainbows were then possible in the sky. Until that occurrence, the whole sky carried a delicate prismatic effect, negating the possibility of individual rainbows. Despite all the symbology involved, there was a covenant between Noah, who was one of the few remaining sunborn by the time he landed on Mount Ararat, and the Solar Legion, that the latter would guide humanity in a way which would hopefully prevent another world deluge of water. These deluges had obviously been as a result of tremendous karmic forces building in the planetary consciousness. Thus, the Solar Legion was commissioned to help humanity understand the true path of divine realization in order to prevent such further karmic forces from accumulating. The Raru Mystery School was spawned through Noah's generation of time travelers, while the Mystery School of Onas held the patterns of ancient divine lineage through succession. In other words, Raru had its initial spiritual directive installed via the knowledge that Noah and his generations carried through the time gate, whereas Onas had its initial spiritual directive commissioned via the knowledge carried forth from the previous mystery schools of the Mazzaroth by the grouping of souls that incarnated in all the mystery schools of the Mazzaroth previous to it. The difference here is that Noah's people broke with the path of the Atlantean knowledge. Onas carried the Atlantean connection forward without a break because it was contained within a successive order of incarnational flow through linear time. It was essential that the Lemurian Atlantean knowledge survive in some form as this changing of the guards occurred. Thus, this group of Onas souls also incarnated into the Babylonian school to wed the Onas-Atlan dynamic with that which was forming at raru. Mir Og, circa 1410 BC, was located in the Fortingall region of Scotland. Here the souls carrying the thread of incarnational continuity through the 12 Mazzarothic Mystery Schools made a transfer of the New World knowledge to the souls who were involved in the preparative activities for the Age of Christ or the New Dispensation. This New World knowledge was a combination of the Old World knowledge and new information that had been accessed through the zodiacal portals of the Mazzaroth with the assistance of the spiritual hierarchy. The preparation stage for the Age of Christ was a period of overlap between the New World period and the Christic Age. This stage drew upon the New World format and yet transposed this knowledge into an advanced understanding applicable to the coming Christic era. The preparation for this new era involved the process of training souls to be able to integrate the new Christic illumination so that it would then be incorporated into the world soul. At both the Mir Og Mystery School in Fortingall, Scotland, and the Mount Carmel Mystery School at Galilee, which is the next mystery school we will be discussing here, the pre-Yeshua Christian mystery Grail knowledge was merged within the Mazzarothic Mystery Schools of the Grail Mazaloth. They were also among the 12 primary Mazzarothic Mystery Schools. The Grail itself is representative of the consciousness of the higher worlds of knowledge, the Mazaloth, beyond the confines of the thresholds of the Zodiac held in the Mazzaroth. Thus the mystery schools of Mir Og and Mount Carmel serve the purpose of merging the path of the Mazzaroth with that of the Grail or Mazaloth. The Christ ultimately represents the Grail Mazaloth. The Christic mystery offers humanity the way to the higher worlds of Mazaloth. Now, I want to pause a moment. This is all quite confusing, I realize. But there's another part that's going to add to the confusion. And that is that the Grail cup represents that path to the Mazaloth, to the higher heaven. So it's really outside the Mazzaroth, which are the 12 gateways entering into the zodiacal signs. However, what's in the cup, the wine, the blood, specifically the blood, of the lineage, that's the blood lineage. And that is not necessarily Mazzaroth, but it has to go through the paths of that. So we could almost say that the Christic mystery works with so many different elements of our real-time world, it's difficult to catalog it and say, well, this is part of the Mazzaroth, this is part of the Mazaloth, when we're dealing with the Christic energy, consciousness. I just wanted to define that because I have stated in the past, just briefly, that the blood cup, the blood path, was the red road. And you would think, oh, well, the red road of lineage, that has to be the Mazzaroth. But not necessarily. It's sort of a betwixt and between. Now we come to the mystery school at Mount Carmel, circa 1386 BC. This was located in Galilee before, during, and after Elijah's physical participation there. Its most ancient and sacred name, known only to its initiates, was, now I cannot possibly pronounce this, so I'm going to spell it for you, Jophirhadzikal. I can understand why it was only for the initiates, because you'd have to spend years learning how to pronounce it. The original mystery school of Mount Carmel was founded by a Hebraic Celtic member of the Grail family known as Raphael. His mother was the sister of Helene, the great-grandmother of Mariana, who was the mother of Yeshua. Japhael was 21 years of age when he arrived at Mount Carmel, having come from Scotland for the first time. He had been given the assignment of founding a mystery school at Mount Carmel as a sister to the one at Fortingal, by the Inner Planes order known as the Academy of Christ. 16 initiates came with Japhael from Fortingal, all of whom were of the sacred order of the Rose, or Sharim, from whence comes the name the Rose of Sharon. The symbol for the order of the Sharim was a rose pierced through by a sword of light. Their mystery was, of course, the Grail mystery, and it was brought into focus by Japhael, whose soul was once Osiris and would become the host soul of Yeshua when the pure soul entered that incarnation at baptism, at which point the Osiris soul departed. This latter part I just reworded right now because I was previously explaining it from the perspective of the 1990s in a way that would be even more confusing, so I decided to reword it a bit. But what Thoth is speaking about here is that there were two souls of Yeshua. The first one was the birth soul. It came in at the time of birth, and that is the Osiris soul. I used to have other terms for it, but that's what I'm calling it now to make it a little simpler. The soul that was Osiris. And that soul maintained the body until baptism. And when Yeshua was baptized, the pure soul entered the body, which is a soul that had never been incarnated before. And then the Osiris soul could leave the body. It did come back again at the time of crucifixion, and the two souls together went through that challenging experience. So the Osiris soul was holding presence to help the pure soul to be able to navigate the physical world up until the baptism, because when the baptism occurred, that's when the archangelic frequency entered the being of the pure soul. It didn't need any help at that time, but it did return, Osiris did, at the crucifixion, because again a great deal of help was needed. And now to the College of Pythagoras, circa 529 BC. This was located in Italy. His college contained a lost mystery working on the sacred numerology of the Mazzaroth dynamic. From Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, and I quote him here, Pythagoras established a school, or as it has sometimes been called, a university, at Crotona, a Dorian colony in southern Italy. He gathered around him a small group of sincere disciples whom he instructed in the secret wisdom which had been revealed to him, and also in the fundamentals of occult mathematics, music, and astronomy, which he considered to be the triangular foundation of all the arts and sciences. Now that ends the quote. And I say, according to Diogenes Laertius, probably not pronouncing that right, who lived in the 3rd century BC, Pythagoras studied in Delphi, Greece, under the oracle Themistoclea, before founding his mystery school in Italy. From the book entitled Priestess by Norma Laurie Goodrich, and I quote her here, before Pythagoras completed his formal studies at Delphi, Pythagoras had already worked under the best teachers of his day. He spent 22 years in Egypt. There he underwent his first initiation into the mysteries, i.e., he descended into the underworld and or suffered a cataleptic death, and was reborn into a more powerful second life. Leaving Egypt after his graduation, which was the initiation, i.e., the initiation and graduation were the same event, Pythagoras went next to Babylon. There he studied 12 more years, this time under the Magi. After these 34 years of advanced study, Pythagoras journeyed to Delphi. There he formulated and expressed those doctrines which spread widely over Europe during his lifetime. These teachers and their students continued this dissemination of doctrine. Now that's the end of quotes from Laurie. By the time Pythagoras had established his mystery school at Crotona, he had incorporated the most arcane sacred doctrine into his experience, it having been handed down to him through the priesthood of the light over the ages, originating from such beings as Melchisedek and Enoch in more ancient times. The mystery of Mazzaroth was central to the great work of these masters, and thus became so to the esoteric teachings of Pythagoras as well. The Galilee Mystery School, circa 95 AD, was located on Mount Tabar and founded by Simeon ben Yochai and his disciples. This mystery school had no actual name and consisted of only a handful of initiates. However, it represented a major threshold for the mysteries of the Mazzaroth, in that it provided a powerful mechanism for insertion of the Mazzarothic consciousness into the planetary mind. Simeon ben Yochai received much of his higher-level information through actual visitations by souls working with the Inner Planes Order by the name of the Academy of the Righteous. From his interaction with these souls, Simeon ben Yochai created a work which is considered by scholars of the Kabbalah to be a pillar of illumination in the Kabbalistic tradition, and thus, from the greater perspective, in the mystery of Mazzaroth as well. The 12th Mazzarothic Mystery School, as revealed by Thoth, is the Way of the Red Lion, circa 1275 AD. The mystery work culminating in the compilation of the Zohar, referred to as the Book of Splendor, compiled by Moses de Leon and others in Granada, Spain. Thoth reveals that Moses de Leon did not simply happen upon the jar containing Simeon ben Yochai's scrolls. Rather, he went directly to the location where they were to be found and knowingly revealed them. He was able to accomplish this because his soul had been incarnated previously as the very same Simeon ben Yochai. The members of the Way of the Red Lion gathered the information for the Zohar. Many of them went with Moses de Leon on a 7-year journey across Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East to collect arcane knowledge for this project. It was on this pilgrimage that de Leon was psychically led to the scrolls of Simeon ben Yochai. The Zohar is seen historically as a strictly Hebrew Kabbalistic work. However, the members of the Way of the Red Lion, who were Moses de Leon and his company in the 13th century Spain, were focused on incorporating the alchemical and Kabbalistic patterns of true mystical Christianity as well. This was purposely integrated in a way that would not be obvious to the uninitiated, but held specific signs and codes for those who were and would be initiates of this path in the future. The mystery of the Mazzaroth is accessed at its most supernal level through the hidden messages of the Kabbalistic writings as penned by those of the Way of the Red Lion, and is witnessed via the stages of alchemical transformation which unfold in the soul as a result of embracing these higher consciousness dynamics. I will continue off script about the Way of the Red Lion and Moses de Leon. He had a specific companion with him, companion in the work, who was a seer, and her name was Judi, Judi. Together they translated the Simeon ben Yochai works into a deeper understanding. They didn't change them, but understand that Simeon had placed some of it in a form that was coded, you might say. And so with Judy's help, they were able to translate this. Moses had a beautiful home. It wasn't a luxurious estate, but it was quite elegant. This is where they all met, and he had a library that was quite unique, and also an alchemical room because he was an alchemist as well. And also he had access to a very special library room in a place in the city that was a special library for scholars from around the world. And not just anyone was allowed entry, but Moses de Leon was. So the Way of the Red Lion and Moses de Leon, Judy, and his companions in this work were able to create a bridging between the Mazzaroth and the Mazaloth at a very crucial time in history. To distinguish the Mazaloth Grail and Mazzarothic mysteries from each other, the mystery of Mazzaroth was primarily the great work of the generational hierarchy, the zodiacal powers which set into motion and control the evolution of humanity. The Grail mystery, however, even in its pre-Yeshua form, was and is more aligned to the birthing of a spirit-soul creation beyond the limitations of this zodiacal realm altogether, i.e. the higher light worlds of Mazaloth. Nevertheless, these two streams of knowledge are intimately interwoven and often taught within the same mystery schools. The Mazzarothic Zodiac and the Mazzalothic Grail or christic path are inextricably linked together in the evolution of humanity on the earth. Their union is symbolized by the Vesica Pisces, the two penetrating circles forming a fish at the center. The Mazaloth Christ represents the future consciousness of this planet, which is also represented in the Johannine tradition and in the original Grail mystery concepts. Only after humanity can fully receive the full mystery of the Mazzaroth can the mystery of the Grail, Mazaloth, start to be realized. In conclusion, you may work with any of these Mazzarothic mystery schools or really just ask to receive energies from all of them. We close with the logos from each of these schools.